story I have to share with you is talking about the successes of our kids in foster care, the ones that have a court-appointed special advocate working alongside of them. In our county, we have 100% graduation rate. We've never dipped below a 92% graduation rate for kids graduating from high school. And we are so proud to say that about 82% of those kids have gone on to colleges or universities or some type of trade school. And we're particularly impressed with one young lady. One of our current CASA staff members was serving her, and she was invited to go to this young lady's graduation from high school. And she didn't have any family or friends, but she invited her CASA volunteer to come and join her. And during her speech at her graduation, she called her CASA up on stage and said, "Without my CASA volunteer, I wouldn't be standing here today, accepting the highest honor of their school." And so the importance of CASAs in the lives of kids are so critical.
Hello, this is Gina
and Don
with Focused Healthy Family. This is podcast number 47. And today we are talking with Diane Smyers from CASA of San Bernardino County, California, about foster care and adoption. But before we get into that, let's hear a word from our sponsor.
Today's podcast is sponsored by CASA. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found CASA. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com, and find out more information there.
And stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like CASA.
We're back, and today in our podcast, we're talking with Diane Smyers about foster care. She brings a unique dynamic to the CASA team. She has been in the foster care system herself and has experienced the despair that many of our youth face daily. She's been a part of the bleak statistics that foster youth encompass. She was blessed to have had been appointed a CSA appointed to her at a critical time in her life. The people at CASA have made a pivotal, life-changing difference in her life, her self-esteem, and helped her see that she was not defined by the labels imposed on her by a broken system. She learned life skills, the importance of a good work ethic, relationship boundaries, budgeting, and about community resources. It is her goal to recruit and train future CASA volunteers to change lives, one youth at a time. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you so much.
We are very glad for you to be here and to enlighten us as we spend this month talking about foster care and what services are available.
So they leave in blank spots here, because this is part of our series talking about foster care, and I it's hard to know where to start because there's a lot to this. There's a lot of complexity to it, but I think want to maybe talk about your own experience because you were in the foster care system. You not only work for people that are helping foster kids, you were part of that system. So if you can maybe share kind of your story and what all it was like.
Sure. Well, I was in the foster care system in a different state, in Colorado, and in some states, CASA volunteers are known as guardian ad litems. and they have to have some kind of a legal background in order to serve kids in foster care. I went into foster care as a teen, just moved to Colorado to a teeny tiny little town called Peyton. And it was a huge culture shock coming from California, from a huge metropolitan area, going to a teeny tiny little town. And it was there that our high school counselor befriended me, and we kind of formed a unique friendship. And really, I really think of her as a godsend, because we were able to talk about the future, but also we also prayed together. Now, obviously, if that's not something that's accepted in schools, but we did it anyway. I guess we were rebels. But as a result of building that foundational friendship and that trust, I shared with her some things that were going on in my home, and that sparked or triggered the call to Children Protective Services and my removal the following day. And the day that I was removed, living in a tiny town, everybody knows everybody, and I had been there less than 6 months. But to have a social worker and numerous police officers come to your school and escort you out, that certainly set the stage and many rumors for years to come, until it was clarified that I didn't commit a crime. This was just how they did the removal process. And they put you in the back of a police car and drove me into Colorado Springs. And the first night that I was in foster care, they could not find a placement. So I slept at the Department of Children and Social Services office, just kind of on a cot. The next day, they were able to put me in a foster home. And it was a mom and a dad, a biological son, and then they had a foster sister or foster daughter and a foster son, all around my same age. And I spent less than a month there. I was far accelerated in my education, so I was graduating early from high school at 16. But the night before our graduation, myself and my foster brother, we were supposed to walk. My foster brother found out from the school that he was 1 credit shy of graduating, so they wouldn't let him walk with his classmates. To me, it didn't matter because I had been at that school less than a month. But for him, that's deeply impactful. And unfortunately, as a result, and as is with many kids in foster care, there's those secondary traumas. And it's huge for our kids to even graduate from high school, let alone at the 11th hour to be told you can't walk because you're 1 credit shy. So his buddies took him out and got him drunk and high. And he intended on taking his life that night. And he had come home that night and called the entire family out into the backyard, where he proceeded to shoot himself.
Oh my.
Wow.
Thankfully, he's a bad shot. And he was drunk and high enough that he was wobbly, but so thankfully he survived. But as a result of that secondary trauma, and this is not the normal case. I just want to let you know that kids in foster care do not immediately get CASAs. But the program in Colorado Springs had just started when I came into the system. And so not only was I removed that night and went to go stay at my high school counselor's home that night, but they immediately appointed me a CASA volunteer, or in this case, a guardian ad litem. And she was critical and essential in getting me the support services that I needed, not only to be able to process the reasons why I came into the system, but also to process what I had just experienced in the foster home. And so she helped me to get those unique services that I needed to be able to move forward in life and advocate through the courts and with social workers and ironically, and again, this is not a normal thing. Ironically, she was also the attorney that was appointed to me through the courts.
Wow. Okay.
And so you know, I have to just say again, it's not the normal situation. But normally a youth would have a separate attorney and a separate CASA or guardian ad litem. But she was critical in getting me what I needed and also getting me moved. She saw that I was more independent and resilient than some of the other youth that she has served in the past. And so she was able to get me into a faith-based emancipation program. Oh, wow. And it was a group home. So I got moved a day after the event, shortly after my graduation from high school. And there they really focused in on preparing me for my next steps in life. I had a goal of emancipating before my 18th birthday. And that was my goal. And there were times that she would tell me, hey, no, we're going too fast. You're only 16. But we did succeed on emancipating at 17 from the foster care system and being declared a legal adult in Colorado. But there was a lot of steps and a lot of resources that had to come into play to get me ready for that and for that adult responsibility.
And when you talked about emancipation,
Yes.
that word, you talked about from the foster system, but did you also have to do that from your parents or biological parents?
No, my parental rights were, so with the parental rights, they still maintained legal rights over me, but with regard to me being in their home.
Okay.
That did not retain.
Okay.
And so, but often by the time that a youth comes to a CASA or guardian ad litem program, oftentimes the parental rights have been terminated.
Okay.
So again, I'm a unique situation where parental rights were not terminated. They just couldn't have physical custody of me.
Okay.
But I still had, limited contact with my folks, in the process. So, so it wasn't something that the judge said, no, you can't have contact. But so, but I truly believe that without Virginia Etheridge advocating for the services that I needed at that time, I wouldn't be where I am today. Yeah. And I wouldn't have achieved half of the great things that I've accomplished in my life, career-wise or otherwise, without her. And with CASA, she became after 18, you're emancipated in Colorado, you're cut off from services, at least way back in the 80s. That was the case. Right. It may have changed, but she still continued to be a trusted friend. Okay. And we have been, she's been somebody that I could go to about anything for over 35 years. Unfortunately, she passed away late last year. But oftentimes that relationship with your CASA is a lifelong friendship that's built.
Sure. And like you talk about at 18, you're out of the foster care system, and so I imagine you kind of feel left hanging, but it sounds like she continued that relationship with you because obviously there's still so much support that's needed for young adults, 18 and into their 20s.
Yeah. And in some states, foster care services, there's what's called extended foster care.
Mhm.
That's given to our kids up until the age of 21, but that's on a state by state basis.
Okay. So yeah, every state is different. And like you mentioned, you're in San Bernardino County, California. So each county, I guess states have different laws, but then each county has an organization to support
Correct.
foster youth.
Yes. And so sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I always made it a goal at some point in my life that I wanted to get to a point in my career where I could give back and go to work for a CASA program. And so so I've had that opportunity for the last 5 years. And I left a 6-figure job with Google gladly to be able to fulfill this lifelong desire to give back to a organization that helped me substantially as a child.
That's powerful. And yeah, to hear, I was curious how you got into the work you do and didn't know if you'd been in this line of work for a long time, but it sounds like you went into, I'm assuming, technology if you were working for Google.
Yeah. Well, I've when I used to own 7 vocational schools here in Southern California, but we would train nationally, more corporate and those that would get injured on the job and couldn't do their usual customary employment. And so my specialty became working with those individuals that had upper extremity issues.
Oh, wow.
And so we would train them specifically on computer-based programs where they could do everything you and I do by mouse or keyboard, they would do by voice, and doing all the integrations into the mainframes or customary or custom software, what have you. And so I was with Virginia's help and guidance and mentorship, even with opening that business and expanding, we were fairly successful.
Yeah, that's powerful. So you were in the helping profession, so to speak. And I'm an occupational therapist. And so, yeah, that, that being able to adapt a situation for someone with a physical limitation like that to be able to work, that's awesome.
We actually have my son's fiance works for a division of Google. Oh
yeah.
And she's has some disability.
Yeah, she has some physical limitations, and yeah, they've been
so we get that
supportive for her. But yeah, right. Yeah, there's so many people out there with different issues, and
I was curious. You talked about some of them in your own story, but what are some of the, I don't say, typical challenges that a foster child runs into?
One is education, because sadly our kids get moved around frequently. And every time a youth is moved, it may not be within the same city. They try to keep them within the county, but nationally we have a shortage of foster homes or group homes that are available. So sometimes they may live, they may get moved 25 miles away, or they may get 50 miles away, whatever it may be. And so then you're changing school districts. And you may go from a lower performing, academically challenged school district to a higher performing school district. And then you have that challenge of trying to bring them up to that standard. And oftentimes our kids are categorically listed as special ed when they're not special ed. They're just moved around so much that every time they get moved, they lose about 6 months of education. And so one of the challenges is how do we meet them and meet those needs? And so that's really where CASA Volunteer, first and foremost, can make a direct impact by advocating for testing services, can advocate for customized learning plans, maybe taking them out of a traditional school setting, getting them on IEPs, or getting them tutors, whatever it may be.
Right. Yeah, those things that
communicating with the teachers and all the administrators that are involved. And that's first and foremost. The other things that we see is, kids nationally. We have pregnant and parenting teens because they're seeking that acceptance and that love. And so they think by creating another human that's going to, meet that need.
Yeah.
Oftentimes that creates an additional crisis, and sadly that means sometimes their children go into foster care. And so that generational cycle continues. Again, that's where CASA can come alongside of them and provide support services or bring support services into play to help them to be successful as a parent, even if they are young. Or we advocate in the courtroom for them. We our court systems hold CASAs and guardian ad litems in high regard. And oftentimes, I know that there's been a couple of times in our program where judges have stopped the hearings until they get a CASA report. If they didn't see a CASA report from, our volunteers who are spending 12 to 15 hours a month with these youth or advocating for the services they need, the judges don't feel like they have enough of a picture of the unique situations the youth is in. So they will stop the proceedings until they get that CASA report. And they're usually, when we're advocating for services, we're talking to social workers, we're talking to the youth attorneys that are appointed, we're talking to doctors. 80% of youth in foster care are on some type of psychotropic medication. Because shockingly, when they're removed from foster care or from their home, they're anxious and depressed. So they are put on psychotropic medications. We have found that when a CASA volunteer is appointed to them, that over time, they're able to reduce or completely eliminate the need for psychotropic medication.
Well, that's wonderful.
Now they have that one consistent person in their life that's not paid to care about them.
Yeah.
And, other times it's advocating for things that I don't know if you ever did this as a teen, but some teens have decided to get tattoos as a teen and they regret it. Or they maybe it's advocating for that tattoo removal, or advocating for braces, getting those types of services, or helping them get their driver's license, getting their social security card. These are services that we can help with, and not only educate them on how to do it, but walk through the process with them. Our specific program in San Bernardino County, we serve, in addition to, any kid that's coming into the foster care system, we do serve the CSEC population, which is commercially sexually exploited children. So these are traditionally youth that have been trafficked. I am currently serving a young lady who's been trafficked up and down the state of California, and she's a tough cookie, but she's a fighter. And so, unfortunately for some of our youth that have been part of being trafficked, oftentimes they're addicted to drugs or alcohol or both, and so we have to advocate to get them into treatment. So there's a variety of ways that CASAs, engage and advocate for the services that our kids need. It's really a one-on-one, basis. No youth is the same.
Right.
And the other joyful part of this is, let's say, for example, we're talking with our youth, and over time they're talking about an Aunt Cindy.
Okay.
Well, there's nowhere in our records that show anything about an Aunt Cindy. Because let's face it, when kids are being removed from foster care, the last thing parents want to do is give full disclosure of other family members that might be able to take them in.
Wow.
And so now youth is talking to their CASA, and they keep bringing up Aunt Cindy, or maybe their favorite second grade teacher. And you start building a pattern where we can explore what's called the Family Search and Engagement Act. And we have the ability to partner with Department of Children and Family Services to potentially find Aunt Cindy. And, Aunt Cindy may not even know that, that their niece or nephew went into foster care. And so we can start that process and see if Aunt Cindy could be a potential connection, a family connection, or potentially we've had successes with kids that a young lady that we had a CASA volunteer that was working with a young lady. We found out about a family member in Texas. I believe it was an aunt or a great aunt. And that youth ultimately, with the help of both states, California and Texas, and all of the resources available, we were able to get her into guardianship.
Wow.
Family. And when I last heard an update, she was in college and had graduated.
Wow. Well, that's a powerful story. Yeah.
Yeah. Like just being able to be placed with someone who is in the family can be powerful, but getting that information, right? You don't have all of that when they get put into the foster care system and removed from the.
Well, that's we talked with Richard Villasana, and that's one of the things he does, and it was a fascinating and that's how he got us to you and got us to all the
CASA, and finding other people to talk to, that we wanted to explore this idea of foster care and to help support parents, because we're all about helping kids essentially in the family unit and whatever that looks like. So kids who are in the foster care system, they have these same needs, and all the things you're talking about that a CASA volunteer does. Right. Those are things that parents typically do, advocating for the child. And we watched the video of the founder on the national website and talking about that they're volunteers. And I kind of paused for a minute and I went, well, if they're volunteering, they're not getting paid to do this. So they have to be doing it because they want to and because Absolutely. They really care. And that's powerful. And that's powerful.
It is for somebody to, for our county specifically, a large population of our volunteers have families, have full-time careers, but yet they make time. And it's they're very intentional in their time that they spend with their CASAs. And it's incredible to see those relationships bloom. And one thing I also want to mention is the misconception about foster care.
Okay. Yeah.
There are some folks who believe that kids are in foster care because they're bad kids.
Oh.
They are not bad kids. They're good kids in a bad situation that was never caused by them in the first place.
Right.
We do serve youth who've made some mistakes, and had committed like petty crimes, things like that. But as we dig into what caused them to steal a brush, it's out of need or necessity.
Yeah.
And so I want to at least put that statement out there that our kids are not bad kids.
Right.
One, they're kids like anybody else's kids in or out of foster care. They're still kids.
They're still kids. Yeah, we talk about behavior. If you look at the behavior of a child, the behavior is not the problem. The behavior is them communicating that there's something underlying causing it. And so there's no different. If there's a kid that's stealing, why is it they're stealing? There's some underlying need there. And and that's, you think about that they're stealing food because they're hungry, or, the parents are not cooking for them. They're not shopping. They don't have
Well,
access.
and plus going through all that, I mean, even especially to a small child,
Yeah.
the simplest things can be traumas.
Yeah.
And so imagine going through that trauma and then more trauma by moving around all the time. So it can affect behavior,
Absolutely.
just the fact of having that much anxiety. And so, yeah, that, wow.
And sometimes you're moving, youth are moved into, family situations with different cultures, or they eat differently, or, they.
Oh, yeah.
Different rules in the home, different
Exactly.
expectations and things. And
But that's really where the CASA volunteer come alongside of our youth and can really calm the storm. And they can, they can advocate and work together with their placement, whether it's a group home or a resource family, also known as a foster home, and really just kind of work on that integration. But if it's someplace that truly is not a good fit, we can also advocate for removal and placement elsewhere.
I'm kind of curious, as a CASA volunteer, obviously they go through some training to do that. And then when they're working, or, with one, I would imagine one child at a time, how much time are they typically spending, with that child, just to give a picture of what that looks like?
Yeah. So we ask for an 18 in our program. And again, every county is different. We ask for an 18-month commitment, 12 to 15 hours a month. And that's not all face-to-face with our youth. Like I said, that's advocate or talking with all of the interested parties that are involved. But they also spend at least twice a month face-to-face with that youth, taking them out into the community, and showing them some of the community resources that as they get closer to 18 and making that decision whether they want to stay in foster care, or preparing them as they near 21 to exit foster care, providing them help getting those community resources, but also learning about their hopes, wants, dreams, and desires, and making those connections and trying to move them forward towards that goal.
I was curious about the difference between the ad litem and the CASA. Is there a dramatic difference? I know probably one is legal, one has more legal background, but are they respected the same way in court? And what are the differences?
So the biggest difference is the guardian ad litems. I know in Colorado and Florida, I don't know what other states that they have the guardian ad litems, but they have to have some sort of a legal background. But yes, they're equally respected by the courts. They're equally respected by their peers and equally respected by the youth. The fact is that as soon as kids know that they're not getting paid to care about them, and they're not being, a lot of youth, I certainly felt like this, and I know other youth have felt this. At one point, I remember saying, come on, stop parading adults in front of me, because those adults, granted, they were wanting to come in to bring services to me. And this is before I had a CASA. But they just wanted me to regurgitate my story about what brought me into foster care. CASAs and guardian ad litems, while we have access to what brought them into foster care, we don't focus on that. We focus on, okay, let's move our youth forward. We know that some kind of abuse or neglect has happened. Severity levels are different, but what do we need to do to move our kids forward so that they have a success? They have a chance at success.
Yeah, that's powerful, because when you experience trauma, you get stuck living in the past. And so
Yes.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, like you said, they're always asking you to repeat the same story, and
Yeah,
just wanted to get away from it. I could imagine.
yeah.
So
Well, and when they learn that that our volunteers don't want you to restate why you're in foster care. By the time, at least in our county, by the time that we are appointed, they've been in foster care 18 months to 2 years.
Wow.
Oftentimes parental rights may have been terminated or parental rights may be limited, but but we're focused on moving them forward. And as soon as they know that we're not paid to care, we get immediate respect from our kids.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm imagining, do you remember like what that was like for yourself as a teen when you found that out?
I remember when Virginia told me that she's not paid to care. She knows, she knew what brought me into foster care, but she said, look, I don't want to focus on it. But I kept saying, I'm sorry, so you're not paid to do this? I'll reserve the expletives that I know that I used, but it was unbelievable as a teen that an adult would want to do this out of the kindness of their heart.
Well, and we didn't get about the training. What does a CASA go through as far as training?
So nationally speaking, we have 990 programs approximately in the country, in every county in the nation, and everybody goes through 30 hours of pre-service training. And so, and that is established by national standards, but also we implement county by county, anything that makes that county unique as we're preparing the CASA volunteers. And by no means does that mean that they are absolutely 100% prepared for anything, when they're working with our youth, but it gives them a foundation and kind of groundwork for starting off. And the thing that I really respect the team that I work with, because I would say 98-99% of our team, it's not a requirement by any means, but we either currently are serving our own CASA volunteer or our own CASA youth, or have served a minimum of 1, 2, or more kids in foster care. And that looks like, they also go through extensive background checks, FBI screenings, Department of Justice, the Children's Index, and then we pull driving records because they are going to be transporting our youth potentially. We want to make sure they're not, that they don't have tickets or a lot of accidents or anything like that. And so they go through a rigorous screening process before they're ever introduced to one of our kids. And once they go through the pre-service training, all the background checks, then they either virtually or in person get to go to the juvenile courts, and they raise their right hand and take their oath of confidentiality with the presiding juvenile court judge. And they welcome each volunteer gratefully into as being a CASA volunteer.
Wonderful.
Wow.
And from that, then in our program, you're invited into the closest office to your home. We have 3 offices in our county. We have the largest county in the nation with about 22,000 square miles to serve. And so we have satellite offices throughout our county. And so they're invited in and they get to review 2 or 3 files. Files. And whichever one tugs on their heart and where they feel that they best can serve a youth, that's the one that we ask the judge to appoint them to.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you mentioned before we got on that, but how many kids are in the system itself, nationwide, and then in your own county?
Sure. So nationally, at any given time, there's about 500,000 kids.
Wow.
In foster care, which is just obscene in my book. But in our county, we have about 10,000 kids. that's in foster care. We have the second highest amount of kids in foster care in our state, second to LA County.
Okay.
And then so you said so 500,000 kids nationally, and then how many CASA reps to fulfill that? What's the ratio? It has to be, I would imagine, pretty low ratio.
Well, there's I'll clarify. So there may be 500,000 kids in foster care. Not all of those youth are going to need a CASA.
Oh, that's true.
Some are more resilient. In our county specifically, we have right around the 10,000 mark, but we have about 412 kids that are on our wait list. Now, those numbers, both of those numbers have substantially jumped up since schools returned in person post-COVID, because ours jumped from 6,500 to 10,000.
Wow.
And that's because they now had someplace safe that they could report the abuse or neglect or whatever was going on.
Okay.
So not all of the kids coming into foster care will get a CASA. I would absolutely love it. That would be, my dream, but it is a challenge to find folks that are going to be committed, for the long haul. Some of our programs, you serve 12 months. Some of our programs may be a 2-year commitment.
Right.
So really it's county by county.
Yeah. And depending on the age of the child, because can they have a CASA representative no matter their age, or is it?
Yeah. Yeah. So the way that the youth in foster care get a CASA volunteer is either the social worker, the youth's attorney, the judge, and if the youth is highly skilled at knowing their rights, which we have some youth, any of those parties can request a CASA be appointed.
Okay.
And I've never known a judge to turn it down.
Okay.
But if let's say, for example, a child is, removed and 60 days later, there's a request for a CASA, I can't imagine that necessarily would be, there would have to be extreme extenuating circumstances.
Okay.
So usually they try to give the parent or guardian the opportunity to regain custody through a series of actions, whatever that may be,
right.
before limiting or removing their parental rights.
Okay.
But oftentimes, at least in our program, these are when they're referred to us by the courts, these are kids that have no one.
Yeah.
They have no family connections. They don't have any connection with anybody. And so that's where they feel that, we can best serve. And I have to agree that, and it's oftentimes we see for the first time, at least in my case with Virginia, I saw modeled almost on a daily basis, because ironically, her law office was right next door to the emancipation program that I was in.
Oh, okay.
But I got to see healthy relationships modeled.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes that's the case for a lot of our kids.
Right. There are all those things that they don't have, and
exactly. Yeah.
Ways of living. And
what about adoption? Do how many of the fosters maybe get adopted out of it?
So
either by the foster parents or outside of that, I guess.
I wouldn't necessarily have those numbers. Our program isn't designed to go from mentorship and advocacy into adoption.
Oh, okay.
But I do know that there's been a couple of folks that I've heard about that had been CASA volunteers, came off of their youth's case and wanted to pursue guardianship.
Okay.
But that's not the purpose of our our program, but we can certainly, if there's somebody that wants to, parental rights are terminated, the judges are very good about putting kids up for immediate adoption.
Okay.
Oftentimes we find that in our county, most of the kids that we have in our program are 9 to 19 years old.
Okay.
It's because the little ones typically get adopted quicker, obviously, than teens or tweens.
Right.
And so, they do make that adoption opportunity available.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's something we can explore more, talking with people more about that end of things of the adoption. But there's just so much involved in the
Yeah.
foster care system, and it's wonderful to know, that there are volunteers out there, and there are
Take
these
care.
organizations, to support these kids. And obviously, there are not enough volunteers, so it's important to let people know that this even exists, because I'm sure there are people who would be willing to volunteer and
Oh, yeah.
eager to. If
And
they have
one
this
thing I
information.
wanted to mention to you, so one of my brothers, he's 5 years older than I am. He was always the kid growing up that would say, I'm never going to have kids.
Right.
I don't want kids. I don't want to deal with all that nonsense. It was probably because of my actions that it made him not want to have kids. But
Yeah.
you know how pesky little sisters can be.
Yeah.
But I can say that he and his wife became foster parents,
Wow.
fostering kiddos that were born addicted to drugs and alcohol. So they
Oh,
worked
wow.
with extremely special needs
Yeah.
kids.
Mhm.
And all the children except for one, they had adopted out of foster care. Out of
Wow.
those five, or the 5 kids that were adopted, my nieces and nephews have gone on to be successful adults.
Mhm.
But out of them, I believe 3 of them had previously had CASA volunteers appointed to them
Okay.
in LA County.
Okay.
So our love for kids in general go deep. I keep telling him that he's the one with he's the big softie because he's the one that
Yeah.
ended up having the most amount of kids. But it is so rewarding. And also, as foster parents, they were able to adopt
Yeah.
So
with the support of CASA. And
wonderful.
yeah, and they continue to support them a little beyond adoption as
Okay.
well. They
And
support them.
I think now he didn't have the same experience as getting taken out of the home as you did,
No,
or did
no.
he? No.
No. My other siblings were adults by the time that we moved to Colorado.
Okay.
I was the only minor still in the
No
home.
one left in the home.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Diane, this is a lot of complexity to this, and we could probably talk for hours on this, but
We want to be sure that you give additional information.
oh, yes, yes.
CASA and the organization where you're at, and any other resources that people can find you. And we will have this
We
information.
will also have it on the
links
web
as
on
well.
the
But yes.
description.
Yeah, so I can be reached. First of all, our website is www.casaofsb.org. And that will give you direct connection to our program specifically. There are over 990 CASA programs nationally in
Okay.
every county in the nation.
Okay.
So if you're hearing this from a different state, you can always reach out to CASA of whatever county,
Okay.
and locate your closest location. I will provide to you the contact for National CASA as well.
Right. I would
And
imagine
that
through
can
them,
work.
they could locate the local county.
Correct. Yes. But my email is diane@casaofsb.org, and my direct phone number is 909-402-3318. I'm happy to talk to anybody about CASA programs or how to connect with their local county or state programs. And, you don't have to, the only option to serve our kids is not just volunteering. You can come alongside your local CASA program or guardian ad litem program and provide financial support, or each program has a variety of ways that you can support them. Maybe it's gifts in kind, or they may have sock drives or backpack drives for going back to school or what have you. So each county is different. And there's always a way that people can serve. It's not just volunteering.
That's wonderful. And thank you for sharing your personal information
Yes.
and being willing to talk to people, because we're on the other side of the country in North Carolina, but people anywhere in the States can be hearing this. So being able to find that information and learning ways that they would be interested in helping, right? That more than being a CASA volunteer, there's other ways people can help. And we feel that's so important. And we are very grateful for you sharing your personal story as part of this, and the work that you're now doing, and how powerful that is, that you're giving back to the same system that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
So that's our podcast for today. We hope you've enjoyed it. We would love to hear from you. Make sure to leave us a comment. If you like what you heard today, you can learn more about our parenting coaching program or join us for our next workshop, and find out more about Diane at www.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's focused with an ED, healthyfamily.com. You can join us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family, Instagram at Gina at Focused Healthy Family, and on our website you can find links to our blog and this podcast. So remember,
how you speak to your children today shapes their future.